I'm Ash, again, I'm the executive chair at Caire, and I'm really excited to have these two incredible leaders, Rich and Feby, here on stage with me. You know, most consortiums have come and gone, and we often talk about how this one's going to be different. And I think a core part of this particular consortium has to be, what have we done, what have we learned, and how are we going to translate that into making sure that this is sustainable? So I think that's the core of this discussion today. Both of you have really successfully invested and grown companies over the last several number of years, and that's really to advance your core business at the systems you're in. So I'd love to understand, how do you prioritize between your operational needs at your systems versus like long-term visionary investments that you think through as you think through your investment strategies? And maybe I'll start with you, Rich.
No, sure, thanks, Ash. You know, it's been a journey relative to trying to build an investment thesis around a health system, and I think the consistent theme is we're trying to sustain the health system through a couple of different ways. One would be this investment portfolio is supposed to return, have adjusted returns. With that in mind, though, it's not just for the financial hurdles are not as important always as some of the strategic alignment that has to take place for us to consider this successful. So we're always trying to align our investment thesis along the lines of what is the organization trying to accomplish. And this has evolved tremendously over the last several years because we were inundated with a lot of very clever point solutions that were implemented that were solving problems in very specific ways. And as the organization's evolved, and obviously the complexity of care delivery continues, we're looking for better ways to advantage the organization through technology. And I think, as John said, looking for the unfair advantage. And our shift in our thinking around investment is that we have to have better ownership economics. We have to deliver bigger results. But the solutions actually have to be in a much more integrated and effective way for them to be sustainable and for us to be competitive. So part of the catalyst, and we'll probably get to it later, is working in partnership. So not just diligencing everything by ourselves and looking for the best and some shared learnings, being able to participate, and this has been such a remarkable, even 12 hours, just to ideate. Part of it's group therapy, because we have all the same types of issues, but the other is, how can we approach things together to get there faster and bigger? And it's going to make better use, I think, not only of our dollars, but it's going to allow us to scale faster and prove concepts. So our MVP is our proof of concept. It's going to make the investments much more valuable, but I think the efficacy and the application of those solutions is going to drive the core business in a much more effective way.
So, Feby, when we had the discussion last, you talked about thematic investments. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you think about these investment strategies on your end?
Yeah, I mean, just building on what Rich was saying, ultimately for us, it comes down to a vision, and connecting to your first question as well, it's a vision of what how healthcare will be accessed, experienced, and delivered 5, 10, 15 years out. And if we think about it, our tagline and our mission is to sort of build healthier communities. Historically, health systems have sort of gone through the health of the communities largely at the back of hospital assets. But if you think about the future, we'll need to build and sort of deploy capital. All strategy ultimately comes down to capital and people allocation as you build towards the rails for the future. And so it comes down to us in terms of 4 themes at a high level. And you can break that down into sub-themes and all that. But ultimately, problem number 1 is, look, you're sitting on a $4.5 trillion economy that's healthcare. That's by itself the 4th largest GDP. It's greater than the GDP of India and Japan. Now, how do you sort of rationalize that? You rationalize that by keeping people healthy, keeping them outside of hospital assets. So if you think about the core addressable market of health systems, which are hospital assets, it's a melting ice cube. So how are you investing into assets and capabilities of the future where you're able to revenue diversify into alternate revenue streams, alternate business models, and sustain your mission better? That'll mean site of care shifts. So whether you bring care at home at the outpatient, or as Michael was saying, developing models or insurance or partnerships with employers, we're able to take full-sided risk. So I think the first theme for us is how do you sort of move more towards that value-based care and really make your risk-bearing instruments, and all of us health systems have that, more productive and gain more share of that. The second is how do you do the core, as Rich was saying, more productively? How do you make it more effective in terms of clinical care, the next generation of patient experience, as well as, most importantly, how do you make the workforce of the future productive? If you look at most statistics, there's a huge supply-demand arbitrage between the nursing staff, what is required versus what you have. I think currently the shortage number is about 300,000. The same goes with primary care physicians and specialists. A lot of that calculus will come through new workforce, as Michael was saying, but a lot of it will also come through improving the productivity. The second theme that we're working on is how do you leverage AI, digital technologies, and part of why we are in this consortium working with you all is to figure out solutions that can truly improve the productivity of our workforce. The third theme is like really sort of anchor up on the digital transformation of the industry. If you rank and stack healthcare versus other industries, we're in the third last in terms of digital adoption, and the other two, the last one is actually agriculture and hunting. So I often joke that we're one step ahead of hunters and gatherers, but we really need to sort of move on that technology transformation much faster. And I think that's one, and there's lots of themes that spawn out of it. We're really focused on that. And then finally, there's a theme around whole health. We do think about healthcare as very fragmented today. So most health systems focus only on medical care, really at the core of it, right? We do a lot of things, but really at the end of it, it's 99% medical care. Where are we talking about next generation prevention that includes genomics and all that? Where are we talking about mental behavioral health? Where are we talking about pharmacy and how that can be a critical enabler in managing total health? Transportation access, food as medicine. There's just a lot of themes that go under consumer whole health. So we're really intentionally focused on that. So out of these four big themes, we spawn out multiple sub-themes, and we're sort of focusing our investment philosophy across both our investment portfolio, our partnerships portfolio, and innovation portfolio, across all similar themes, and they all come down to revenue. The value creation ultimately comes down through revenue diversification, improving the efficiency and effectiveness so you improve your margin profile, and a higher share of wallet with the consumer because you're taking care of a broader sense of their needs. And finally, you're also developing investment alpha into your sort of investment portfolio on top of that.
So, I mean, all of this innovation is really incredibly important, to your point about us being, we should be better than hunters and gatherers, but it comes with some inherent risk, right? Innovation carries just a lot of challenges. So investing in these things can be risky. How do you manage the risk while you're fostering an environment that encourages innovation, whether it's internal to the system or going in and investing externally?
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember, I'll go back 8 years, and I remember sitting down with our head of risk management. I said, we've completed our analysis, and we are absolutely sure we will have no risk if you don't do this. And we said, well, that's really not the option because we are going to move ahead. So what's step 2 of that? Looking at, and I think iterating on having done this over time and learning a lot from mistakes, I think the way we de-risk it is, I think, being able to look at these potential opportunities, partners, customer, and companies, is being able to do the right diligence, figuring out what are those key aspects of that. What is the tenor of the founder is incredibly important. What does that management team look like? Those have been our 2 largest points of failure when things haven't gone the way we wanted them to. But then the second, what is the fit? It's not both within the market, within the organization. And then to make things successful, it really requires it to be, we talk about scale. We start with a pilot. Our pilot is the first step in an enterprise deployment because we're most accretive and valued a lot of companies, including the ones we're building, is if we can take it to that enterprise scale and show the market and then continue to invest. We de-risk it, I think, by working very closely with the people and iterating on that result with the people who are actually going to use it. So I think having the humility to go and sit with your peers who are actually the experts in those areas, having them an integral part of the process of evaluation, de-risking, and then having them set the tone for the deployment often makes us much, much more successful. And also sharing learnings from others in this room, our peers, our colleagues, who've gone through something similar that we can kind of learn from each other. And those are probably the biggest areas that I think we want to focus on before we would go live.
It's really interesting, just to tag onto that. So I've been on the health system side, and then I've also been on the startup side or on the large tech company side. And it's a very common theme that pilots are where things go to die. Innovations go to die particularly, so in a health system. So how do you think about this at your institutions? How do you encourage from moving from a pilot to large-scale deployment versus just sort of like little projects here and there?
Yeah, I think, and I'll just piggyback off the previous question too. Ultimately, to answer that specific question, I think of it in three swim lanes. One is, I'm a big student of this philosophy of thinking in terms of innovation as thinking in bets. So you're trying to ultimately solve some unmet needs and pain points, and you got to create a portfolio of bets, right? And that portfolio of bets includes a certain set of things where you have high conviction on, you just late to the party in sort of adopting it. So the known knowns where you're lagging behind and it's been figured out in other industries, so hell yeah, we should sort of go do it tomorrow. Why are we waiting and trying to do pilots? And those are less the areas where pilots work. Where do you have known unknowns and unknown unknowns where you're really sort of thinking about, hey, there is a problem. I really am looking for the perfect solutions that solves that problem, but I don't know what that looks like. I want to trial out a bunch of solutions. And I think of pilots more as design of experiments from a mathematical perspective. Really, you're trying to say, I want to test a couple of few parameters, and maybe I'll sort of select a discrete unit. It could be one hospital or a handful of clinics. Well, I'll trial that out and see what I could learn. Maybe the solution does not work at all. Maybe the tech is great, but the adoption from the provider is bad, or there are some parameters in the design of the pilot that I could better understand before I broadly deploy that solution across the board and take on more risk from a capital allocation perspective across the franchise. So I think that's one aspect of it. The second is, I think, to think about it programmatically. It's important for the whole organization to understand that, again, with the thesis of bets, that there will be some winners and losers. Edison would not have invented the bulb if he'd sort of got all of his experiments successful. So we need to sort of take that mindset that it's programmatic. By design, some of them will not work. Let's sort of feed off the ones that work and build internal muscle around that. And the third is being very articulate about the KPIs and the drivers of value creation. It should be a very objective pathway. The reason the pilot scaled or did not scale was because of reasons A, B, and C. What did we learn and did not learn? And therefore, what will we do something differently? So if we couch the pilots and the KPIs to your previous question in the same lens, I think we have more chance of programmatic success.
That's really helpful. So I know that the two of you have collaborated on investments and projects before, and so it's really helpful for the consortium to hear, how did you think about collaborating? What are opportunities that you think about as you sit in this room with others? Are there themes you're looking to invest in? Are there ways you should collaborate so that, as a whole, all of us are kind of successful in these investment strategies?
I think we all have an opportunity to collaborate. We are all regional health systems. Some of us are super regional. We have few markets, but still, the largest health system in the United States represents an enterprise value about 20% of the largest payer. And most of the payers are sort of, United is the largest provider group today, and the top 5 payers have all built their big provider services arm through Optum, Caire, name it, right? CVS, et cetera. So what we have an opportunity to do, if I think about the few themes, it's one around services that require capabilities beyond local delivery. So how do we win in value-based care together? We've not figured out that mousetrap individually as systems. Michael mentioned Kaiser, how are we sort of creating that sort of vertically integrated model that expands our TAM away from just hospital care. And so I think we have an opportunity to collaborate the next generation of care management and care delivery that sort of supports multiple markets and creates economies of scales and capabilities to do that. Digital health is another big one. Not only do we lack the capital to sort of do experiments on our own, we can learn from each other, but a talent pool that comes and works in digital health companies is not we're going to compete. I think if you think about our traditional competition for talent for a health system, you'd think about the other local regional competitor in your market. But you're really competing with the Apples and Microsofts of the world when you're hiring for digital talent. And I don't think that any one health system is well positioned to do that really well. So I think that there is a really big scale accelerant by collaborating in that domain. I would say the whole health dimension is another one. If you think about next generation genomics and how behavioral health, pharmacy, specialty pharmacy, PBMs, a lot of these areas are areas that we can collaborate on. And if you look at a few examples of what we have done together, it is all in this Truveta that you had in your slide before. You had, we did one PBM recently called Capital RX with a bunch of us coming together. So I do think there is a lot of opportunities across those three big categories.
Yeah, and just to build on what Feby said, I mean, when we compare portfolios, there's a tremendous amount of overlap. And I think we face a lot of common problems. Made the joke earlier, it's group therapy to sit down and talk about what ails us all. But just even this morning at breakfast, learning that there are 4 other health systems diligencing the exact same company we are right now, and how can we talk about that, ethically and legally, about how we're looking at that and where we see the strengths and the weaknesses. But I think even on a macro level now that we're here in this forum working together officially with Aegis, it's not just what deal flow can we share, it's what ideas can we share, and who's best positioned out of this consortium to go ahead and maybe be the first builder, first adopter, when we have an opportunity then to follow, to invest, or be your biggest reference customer, and vice versa. And there's going to be a cross-pollination, I think, of that portfolio as we go through time. And Feby and I probably have a long list in a very short time on things we want to talk about. But even just in the last 12 hours, I think it's been really exciting to know there's an awful lot. And I think when we do it together, and that's what I think the differentiation is in this group, we're going to be able to do it better than ever before. The tech is better than ever before. And I think we need the benefit of each other's learnings and collective wisdom to be able to figure out the best possible way where we could move together.
Great points. Okay, we're out of time, but I'm going to leave us with a quick fire round. Okay, I just want one-word answers. Overhyped, underhyped, or just right? Okay, just hype right. Okay. AI in healthcare.
Just right.
Overhyped, but really important. I'm sorry, I don't follow the rules.
Telehealth.
Overhyped.
Overhyped.
Remote patient monitoring.
Just right.
Just right.
Mental health platforms.
Overhyped.
Underhyped.
Next-gen sequencing for genomic profiling.
Underhyped.
Underhyped.
AR, VR for
Underhyped.
healthcare.
Agree.
Underhyped.
Under.
Cybersecurity.
Underhyped.
Always underhyped.
Consumerism.
Underhyped.
Underhyped.
So glad to hear that. All right, with that, please, thank you so much.